All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get started because Ben's got a lot of wisdom that I want to make sure we have a chance for him to share with you all. So good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Mark Kostovsky. I'm the founder and CEO of Minoan. I'm thrilled to be the host today. I know there are a few people exploring Minoan, many members, but for those of you who are less familiar, Minoan is a free centralized ordering platform that allows hosts, property managers, designers, and boutique hotels to furnish and replenish their spaces with top brands on a budget. So we're really focused on helping hosts get the best products to create the guest experiences and saving them as much money as possible, and just making that process a little more approachable, because it can be quite overwhelming furnishing a property from scratch, as I'm sure almost all of you are familiar with. But now time to introduce today's special guest, Ben Wolff. Ben is the CEO and founder of Onera and Oasi. He has just an incredible amount of experience in creating upscale, one-of-a-kind, unique stays. They built two luxury landscape resorts in Texas Hill Country. And Ben also hosted the Unique Stays Summit, actually at the property he's at now in September, where he brought together dozens of people all across the country who are creating really unique hospitality experiences, from like beautiful houseboats to properties that are built around a natural water feature like a waterfall, to people who have built these just incredible tree houses. It was like a phenomenal event, and he's talked a lot about it on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I highly suggest, by the end of today, he'll share some of his handles so you can follow along. Just a few housekeeping items before we jump into the content. The chat is open, as you guys can see. If you simply just want to react to takeaways, you can look there. We're also going to have a Q&A towards the end of today's session, so feel free to put any burning questions into the chat. We'll try to address as many of those as possible. Everyone's muted by default. Please remain muted throughout the presentation, just to minimize disruption. And that's that. So Ben, thanks for joining us today. I'll turn it over to you. I know you put together some slides to help explain sort of your journey, what you do, and I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, hopefully some fun visuals for you guys. Are definitely in a very visual business and product, so should certainly show it to you guys. But first off, thanks a ton to Mark, to Taylor, to the whole Minoan crew for helping put this together. I very much enjoy sharing what I've learned and connecting with new folks. And Minoan's been a great partner of ours, continues to be, as we source FF&E and design our units, and now can make them shoppable. So just really appreciate you guys and invite me on. So I am Ben Wolff, co-founder of Onera, an upscale landscape hotel brand with first two locations in the Texas Hill Country. And I'm also the co-founder of Oasi, which is a full-service hospitality development, management, and growth firm. And I guess we can kick off with just a little bit of background on myself and my story. We'll try not to dwell on this too long, but there's certainly been a lot of twists and turns that have led me to building treehouse hotels and landscape resorts. And I feel like there's a lot of twists and turns, and every part of my journey has really like helped in some way what I do now. And I feel very blessed to have such a passion for what I do, and I feel like have such a fun, albeit sometimes stressful, job now. Whereas other times in my career, I've always been entrepreneurial, but there's been times where it was just a business, right? I wasn't all in. I wasn't kind of in love with what I was doing. So it's great to have found that, and I was like searching for that for a long time. I started out big corporate. Was living in New York City, graduated from NYU. Was definitely entrepreneurial even in college and late high school, but didn't have my thing yet, the business that I was going to build. So I ended up going to work for a big strategy consulting firm, McKinsey and Company, and pretty much as soon as I got there, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next and how I was going to get out of there. It was stayed for a little under 2 years and had some, side hustles in the process. But after that point, I started my entrepreneurial journey, which around 2014 led me to short-term rentals when Airbnb was kind of blowing up in a lot of cities, and just places around the country. And I was on the founding, like very early team of Sensei, which was a short-term rental management company back then, like super early in the space. And I was starting to build my own portfolio of lease arbitrage properties on the side. And, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's effectively just renting apartments or townhouses or houses and then subleasing them on Airbnb, furnishing them nicely or not so nicely, as you can see by some of these photos of my early days, of New York City apartments. But short-term rentals were super new, and it was kind of like if you had a space for people to stay, like they would book it because the inventory was so low. It's a very different sort of, environment than where we're at today, where you have to be like the best of the best to do really well. So started building that portfolio. I ended up leaving to grow my portfolio and build my short-term rental management company effectively when I had friends that were trying to get into the space. And I knew that like I could get my salary covered by the management fees from these folks that wanted me to find units for them and help, build up a management company, with them as our founding clients. So did that, left my 9 to 5 in 2018, and grew that portfolio under management of short-term rentals to 200 units by the end of 2019. And that's right before COVID hit, and most of our portfolio was urban. So we had a lot of city properties. And so big reckoning for that business, and kind of was turned on its head for a period of time. We were able to survive it. Funny enough, I was actually in the Philippines with my team of 20 over there when the border got shut down, and all of our bookings evaporated overnight. So, talk about stressful and kind of, figuring out what we were going to do on the fly, and still trying to like, be a leader for the team. It was definitely challenging, but we made it through, but it was nowhere near as profitable as it was before. And that's what kind of pushed me to do something, take a risk, do something more outdoor focused. Me and my wife had just got married and gone on our honeymoon, where we explored a dozen national parks over like 6 weeks, in an RV, which had its pluses and minuses. We got to wake up in this like amazing BLM free camping land overlooking mesas and, canyons and hoodoos, and it was incredible. But we had a lot of gaffes with the RV, having to drive 4 hours to a dealership to get something fixed, or a compartment breaking and our stuff getting littered on the side of the highway, stuff like that. And so when I was thinking about what I was going to do next and developing what would become Onera, this like higher end, unique stay set in nature, I really wanted it to be much more frictionless for the guests than my experience in the RV, and even some of the like more mid-tier offerings that I saw out there, like Under Canvas and AutoCamp. And it just seemed like there was this massive white space in the market from an AutoCamp or Under Canvas, and kind of like just glamping, all the way on the other extreme to like Amman and Post Ranch Inn and these like ultra luxury landscape hotels. And there was kind of like nothing in the middle, this $500 to $1,500 a night Goldilocks zone, which is, really where Onera plays. Off season, midweek, maybe we'll drop down to 200 or 300 a night, but typically it's 500 a night plus. And some of our, bigger nights will get 1,000, a night plus, even upwards of 1,500. And so, ended up developing Onera, found a piece of property end of 2020, and developed the property in 2021. With the COVID tailwinds of outdoor hospitality, we had really strong success out the gate. Even though at that time we just launched on Airbnb, it was like the only OTA we were using, and we weren't even booking direct or doing anything on Instagram. And we had a lot of success out the gate. Something around $550 ADR, across the initial 8 units we had, at, occupancies in the mid to high 80s, if not even over 90 for some of the units. We attracted some attention from some institutional players that were trying to get in the space, and ultimately sold a 90% stake in Onera Fredericksburg to a public REIT, which was the first such exit in the space. We did well for ourselves and our investors, and we also had them as a partner in the next project, which is Onera Wimberley, where I'm at now, big step up from Onera Fredericksburg in size and scale, and frankly, I think level of luxury and experience. And it was in that second or so year as well that I founded Oasi, which is the management and services company that does all everything I'm doing in terms of future development and hotel management, STR management, and marketing and branding work for other unique stays and other experiential hotels. And we're getting into like the upscale hotel world as well, not just landscape hotels and experiential stays. So that is my story. Told you a little bit about Onera already. We built this kind of Instagrammable nature paradise just outside of Fredericksburg, which is Texas wine country, one of the top driving destinations in Central Texas. And we found this really amazing piece of property that was only about a mile or so from Main Street, Fredericksburg, but really felt like it was tucked away in this enchanted forest. And so we were able to, we did over the past 3 years. Yeah, it'll be 3 years, 3 years in November. We've amassed 140,000 Instagram followers over our 2 properties. We're doing 80% direct bookings, 30 million views on social. And we really got started with social in 22, and we really doubled down and got serious about it just last year, I would say. So yeah, that's the initial bit about Onera. Onera Fredericksburg, some of the stats I mentioned, our ADR is roughly 545. We've been featured in Travel and Leisure and, Best Glamping in Texas. We're 12 units today, but we're actually expanding to 35 by the summer of next year. So that's a big jump. We have some really exciting new units that we're building out there. One has about a 25 to 30 foot cantilever off a piece of structural steel. So it takes the idea of floating to the next level. Like I always thought Monarch kind of looked somewhat like it was floating. I mean, this really looks like it's floating and suspended in the air with a beautiful cedar hot tub, hanging off the back side of it on the back deck overlooking the creek. So it'll be pretty special. Our most well-known kind of famous units here, Monarch Treehouse, this one should be left side of your screen, and then Spyglass, the tube shaped treehouse that we modified and ended up building a number of at Onera Wimberley, our second location. So Onera Wimberley, where I'm at now, is 28 units. We have 100-person event space, can host events up to 150 with indoor outdoor space. We learned a lot about social with Onera Fredericksburg, and so we launched really hard out the gate with this property. We got about 30,000 followers in a little over a month of launching that account. Our first video did over 1 million views with an influencer here, Texas Explorer, who is, I think, the best in the business down here. I've worked with her before, and she does an amazing job. There's always like mistakes and learnings. Like we had that over 1 million view video and it crashed our website. We got all this traffic, it crashed our website. So we weren't even able to capitalize on a lot of it due to bookings. But I think we built our follower base, and hopefully we're still able to convert those people later. But that's Onera Wimberley. Some photos. We have these Spyglass style units that are on the higher peak of the property and has this amazing views overlooking the Wimberley Valley and the Texas Hill Country. They're west facing, so you get these incredible sunsets. And there are 12 of the Spyglass units that are all perched on this hillside, kind of poking out from the trees, facing the view. And then on the lower level of the property, still has amazing views. We have 16 of these greenhouse style units with vegetated rooftops that are irrigated by a gray water system that actually comes from the shower. Trying to be as environmentally conscious as we can in the hill country, which is, water conservation is the biggest issue here. Every unit has a private hot tub, and we have that event space and an infinity pool that's about 40 feet long, 16 feet wide, pretty sizable commercial pool. So that is Onera Wimberley. Now you might ask, why unique stays? Why am I kind of all in on this and, building, $10 million resorts of very unique style construction? And it's very challenging. It takes a lot of work. Even in Texas, that's easier to develop than maybe some other places. It's still, constant problem solving because we're doing something new. We're not just putting up the same cookie cutter boxes that you've seen everywhere and that are much, frankly, easier to build in a lot of cases. So the reason is that I believe that the modern traveler today is demanding these kind of stays and experiences, and there is just a massive still supply and demand imbalance for those that are done right. I think there's a lot of product coming online that are, mediocre. I think Tim Ferriss has a great quote on that front around like there's so much mediocrity out there. Please don't contribute to it, and I feel strongly in that regard as well. We're always trying to do these things right and elevated and really give people an amazing experience and not just kind of hop on a glamping trend or a tent trend or something like that. The beauty of unique stays is that they are inherently shareable and highly Instagrammable. So you get your guests and your customers doing a lot of your marketing for you, which is some of the most powerful ways to market and spread awareness and, for us to get direct bookings. So I think that's a big piece. It's our properties are like, picture made for your iPhone and taking video and photos and posting. So we, a ton of our guests do that, and it leads to a lot of traffic for us. Market differentiation. I mentioned a bit of kind of the glut of short-term rentals that we've seen in the past few years, specifically more commodity products. Having over 7.5 million Airbnb listings today, and there's so much of that product is very undifferentiated. So if you can really stand out, and I think it's necessary to stand out today to achieve the best returns, and that's ultimately why we do this. In addition to loving the product, serving something up that the modern traveler wants, we're able to get it financed and capitalized because the returns are very attractive. In some cases double, your typical STR or more, commodity big box hotel. So that is the why. And something else I find really interesting is just how far behind the US is. I feel like the US is ahead in a lot of ways with, technology and innovation, and like we're at the forefront in a lot of areas. But when it comes to modern hospitality and experiential travel and stays, like we are in the Stone Age. It's kind of crazy how all these other countries, Asia, Europe, you see some of these just incredible integrated landscape hotel properties and experiential resorts that, you can't count on one hand the well done experiential landscape resorts in the US as of like a few years ago. I think that, a lot of them have come online and are being built now. So I think that there's a recognition of that, but there's still so much opportunity and demand so much outstrips the supply if you do it right. All right. So social media is a really big part of our strategy. I believe that in the next few years, certainly by 2030, Instagram and social media is no longer going to be this like, oh, direct bookings are interesting, maybe I should explore this. It's going to be kind of a necessary place to achieve, market leading returns in the space. And I think it already is. And, I believe that certainly for experiential and unique stay properties, that social media will rival, if not beat out, any other OTA. And largely that's because the experience on social for somebody trying to discover a stay is more immersive and sensory. Like you get to experience all aspects of the property and the space. Like video just is so much more dramatically different to understand what it's like to experience a place than static photos and a listing that you're looking at, 50 listings at once. You also have their captive attention, right? Just looking at your property as opposed to, sifting through, tens, if not, hundreds of listings. It's more engaging and it's much easier to share. So they see something they like, it's super easy to just shoot it to a friend, shoot it to a romantic partner. It creates this virality that you're just never going to get on the OTAs. And I think you can also connect more to the property origin story, the founder, like you can just make the story around the property come alive that much more using social media. So yeah, they're inspired to book. They can really visualize themselves being there. They can connect to the story, and it's easy to share with others. So we didn't always know all of these things when it came to Onera Fredericksburg. Like I said, we launched on Airbnb alone, and we were doing very well with COVID tailwinds propelling us, but we were paying 14% to Airbnb or whatever it was and is. Then in a few months after we opened, we actually had an influencer hit us up on Airbnb. This same Texas Explorer that I had launch us at Onera Wimberley. She messaged us on Airbnb, said she wanted to come out and do a collab. And she was persistent. I wasn't super motivated at the time. We were doing well, just listed on Airbnb. Finally said, okay, she said she would do the collab for free. So we spun up an Instagram account. We spun up a direct booking page. She came out and we did like over 2 posts that she did. We did like $30,000 in direct bookings, and did not pay her. So, and that was on, an 8-unit property at the time. So, that was pretty remarkable to me and led me the rest of that year to double down specifically on the influencer strategy. So did that got us to about 30 to 35% direct bookings in that first year. And then in 2023, really wanted to double down and see how far we could push the social media driving direct bookings. So tried to hire an agency, didn't go super well for us, right? I was doing better with the limited knowledge I had and not being super savvy on social media myself, reaching out to influencers, getting inbound and just posting photos. Like we weren't even really doing video, and I was doing better than this agency that, I think I got us to 15,000 followers in a year. They brought on a few thousand in like 4 months. And their way of getting content was, sending an intern with their iPhone. And it was shocking because they had a bunch of like pretty high profile clients and, they had some, pretty legit hotels in Texas and other areas. And so we thought they were going to be much, much better than they ended up being. So that led me to, and us ultimately to build out a team in-house to run social media, do all of our content, do all of the influencers. And initially it was just for our properties. It was for Onera, and then we had a hotel in Palm Springs, and a few other places that we were testing it out on our own properties. And we built up that team, videographers, full-time editors, copywriters, social media managers. And that team's grown. We have, people specifically dedicated to influencers now that help manage and recruit them. And because we saw so much success with our own properties, people started coming to us on the client side. And so really this year that's blown up. We went from really just managing our own properties to we have about 18 clients now on the marketing and social media side, all, multi-unit experiential hotel or just upscale hotel, everything from, a 3-unit luxury glamping location in the Hill Country to a $130 million, Hyatt Boundless Collection hotel outside San Diego, which is the Alila Encinitas out there. So I think I already talked about this slide a bit. Some of our clients, we've seen with Onera, it's a little more challenging to see how good we are because we've always been doing it ourselves, right? But at some of these other properties, it's been remarkable to see some of the uptick in engagement and content and conversions. At that, upscale 4-star hotel outside San Diego, Alila Maria Beach, we have, 36x or 35x their engagement, which is just really astronomical. And they started with 25,000 followers in 4 or 5 months. Now they're up to, approaching 40,000. And with some of the unique stays clients, I mean, we've grown them from 0 to 30,000 followers in for 30 days, 45 days. Had some, videos hit multi-million views out the gate with a pretty limited following. So that is the social side, and that's not all we do, right? Social media and marketing is part of what we do. But Oasi does ground up development. We partner on projects, we do consulting, we do full service hotel and STR management, for, I would say, upscale, boutique, experiential product, unique stays. And then we do growth, which is the marketing, branding, social media content, influencers, all that stuff. So yeah, that's a bit about me, Onera, Oasi, and I'd love to answer any questions you guys have.
Thanks, Ben. We got a question from Stephanie, and would encourage everyone to ask any questions, anything that's top of mind. It's helpful for all the attendees, to get these questions out in the open. Stephanie's asking if you did you give the influencers a free stay, which is a good question. I think one thing I hear a lot is, you said yourself, like when the Texas Explorer was initially reaching out, you were like a little skeptical, and we have a lot of members who have beautiful properties, and they get a lot of outreach from influencers, and it almost seems like, everybody, anyone will take a free stay and they'll promise things in return. And so how do you, obviously you saw enormous success with that one, but how do you think about picking the right influencers? What do you offer them? I think that might be helpful for folks who are listening who might be considering doing, having a similar strategy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've learned, right? We've been burned a couple times. We took the bait of and just the enticing nature of bringing a TV star out to one of our properties in Joshua Tree that we manage, from I think it was from Glee, and we got absolutely nothing from it, right? Like zero, no followers, no bookings, no nothing. And that's a property that, to give a free stay is at least $1,000 endeavor. So was kind of burned there. What we've learned is that it's all about the relevance of the audience and the engagement. Like I think everybody kind of knows the engagement and potentially like the size of the audience when it comes to followers, but relevance is really important. And you need to have authority, some sort of authority in the travel or hospitality space. And it doesn't have to just be a travel influencer. Like we've actually had a lot of success with foodie influencers as well, because they're kind of hospitality adjacent and there's some crossover there and some, crossover authority to their audience. But we don't want a fitness influencer or an influencer that's like, hey, look at me 24/7. And it's just kind of more of a, lifestyle account all about and revolving around them. Because inevitably they're not really showcasing your property. They're more just showcasing like themselves and them talking. So that hasn't done as well for us as a more targeted travel influencer. Like Texas Explorer, for example, you almost never see her. She doesn't show her face much on camera at all. It's like all about the property and the experience and showing it from the point of view of if you were a guest. Engagement, look, I think there's no hard and fast rule on a lower demand time. If we're just doing a comp stay and the room isn't worth as much, we might flex on that a bit, but we're trying to go for 5% engagement plus. And we might go as low as 2 or 3%, but engagement percentages will go down a little bit as the account size grows. Typically, like if you have like a million or multi-million follower account, then 5% engagement is quite high. But the best ones out there are still achieving that. So that's what I would look for. And when it comes to compensation, certainly comp stays, sometimes they would just want to come and shoot the footage and don't even necessarily care about the comp stay. The ones that do a lot of this stuff, and it's harder to schedule with them. But usually that's included. And then the rates can be anywhere from free, besides for the comp stay, up to, a few grand for one collab and one stay. And I would say the best ones in the market, they know they're the best often. And so they might be charging 3,000, 3,500, even upwards of, 4K plus. But if they're really good, they're worth it, right? If I can pay you $3,000 and you're going to generate, $40,000 in bookings for me, I'm going to do that all day. I mean, that's a great return, a great ROAS. So, yeah, I think that, those are my thoughts on influencer spend and how to work with them.
Yeah. And but we have a few good questions in here that are I think similarly correlated. So I'll try and get through all of them in one framing here. There's a question about the event space you have at Wimberley, which I know you and I talked about, because I think at Fredericksburg there was not as much of a focus on like a common area, right? And there's a few more questions about the US in general and bring on investors. I'll start with the Wimberley question, because I remember one thing that we talked a lot about is, moving from a short-term rental into more of a commercial space. And there are like lots of options. Like you could have a front desk, you could have a gym, you can have a pool, you can have an event space, you can also have a fire pit, you can also not have those things. So I want to dig in, like when you were thinking about that event space, what was the rationale? What justified that event? Because it's a beautiful space. So it must have, it certainly was, I'm sure, not cheap. How did you think about making that investment? And then how do you think about, because we have some other people who are interested in thinking about boutique hotels, how do you think about generally that leap and making sure, what amenities do you add that are maybe that make less sense for an individual short-term rental or a few, but make a lot more sense for a boutique landscape hotel?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And look, the event space at Wimberley there was a little bit of a leap of faith there. I mean, we are trying. There is not a comp for the landscape hotel treehouse resort we have here with that event space. Um, Part of the rationale was around that there is a demand and a need for these kind of spaces for, for corporate, for wellness, for weddings. And the options out there, a lot of them are just pretty uninspiring, particularly on the corporate side. It's all kind of big box hotels and convention centers and things like that. So we wanted to cater those folks. It was a higher key count. So having an event space can allow you to host and attract groups in a much better way. So it can help with your occupancy and selling rooms in general when you have a higher key count. And you're spreading the cost of that event space over more doors, over more keys. So it makes sense. We couldn't have had that event space at the original Onera. It wouldn't have made any sense, right? With 8 units or 10 units or 12 units. And then in terms of other amenities, I would say, so we try to have a private water feature at every unit. That's just something that we try to do that we think people really love and significantly impacts the rates that we can get. And always got to have a pool and a badass pool. And our approach has been we can invest in one really badass pool and provide private hot tubs at all the units. And that makes a lot of sense. You could do a lot with that one pool, but people still have the private, water feature option as well. And we've stayed relatively lean, I would say, on amenities outside of that, at least at Onera. And that's largely been, that people, a lot of it is like romantic couples getaways, and they kind of want to come to their unit and stay in their unit. One of the things that we've done is supplement the fact that we don't have a ton of staff and a ton of like services we do in house with using third-party vendor services. So we still can offer in-room massage and private chef and stargazing experiences and all these kinds of things, romantic packages. But we don't have to hire all the full-time staff to execute on them. So that's been a great way. And, people love to stay in their inspiring unit and check the views out. I mean, we were talking about it at the beginning of this call, like Minoan's coming out here to do a corporate event, and you want to give people on the team a chance to spend time in the units because they're so special. So the more we can bring things to the guests in their unit, it seems like the happier they are.
Totally. Yeah, the Minoan team is doing an offsite at Onera Wimberley next week, actually. And so we'll be posting a lot about it on socials. And so if you guys follow us on Instagram, you'll see some firsthand accounts of the property. But certainly, like, as someone who's considering, the event space allows you to open up to different customer types that need that sort of common space. And also those customers like tend to spend a lot, like companies doing offsites, like we're renting out like 17 or 18 of those units where we need that common space because we're going to be working through strategy for next year and we need everyone to come together. If that space wasn't there, we're almost like eliminated, like it's not in our set anymore. We need to look other places. And the other thing, if you guys go look at Onera Wimberley's website or even just these pictures, and especially if you're at the property, like because I went there for the Unique Stay Summit, I walked out and I was like, oh my gosh, this would be like an incredible place to get married. And think of how much weddings cost. And so I think, Ben, like you said, like there's no certainty. And if there is certainty, everyone else is investing in it. So it's like the first few people who take the leap of faith and invest in a pickleball court, they see a great return. But then once it's been proven, then a lot of people invest in it. And so I think it, like you said, like no certainty risk, but it certainly has opened you up to a lot of big, unique types of customers that are super valuable in it. I think it's a key part. There's there's actually a lot of people on, which is great to see, who it sounds like people who have parcels of land already that they're thinking like, okay, we're interested in making this. Like this is Echo's question. You're thinking about creating unique stays on that property. Someone else also mentioned taking the leap into boutique hotels and cabin stays, thinking about investors. I think those are, obviously, I think this is potentially connected because the creating a new unique stay is expensive. It's more expensive because you're inherently trying to do something unique that hasn't been done before. I think it's a lot easier to do those things if you bring in external investors. That also comes with complications. How do you think about the trade-offs of like going at it on your own or deciding where you need to go and realizing you need help to get there? Right? And I know you got a ton of experience with this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on your goals and your vision. I mean, for me, even early, my vision, there's kind of been leaps to the vision, right? Like early on, I'd never done any development. I'd just done kind of more commodity urban STRs. And Onera Fredericksburg was a pretty sizable leap, right? Even though it's much smaller than the leap of Onera Wimberley. So in order to take these big swings and try to realize this pretty, really compelling and inspiring vision, I've needed investors, right? I mean, I wasn't able to finance all this myself or with my, past management company. Having the past management company definitely helped. That income stream in that business guaranteed the first loan that we took out, the construction loan for Onera Fredericksburg. So that income really helped us to secure, the debt, which was huge. And I had a lot of clients on the short-term rental management side that trusted us. We had made them money, so they were the first people that I went to raise capital for the first project. And pretty much all of them said yes. It just mattered how much, they were going to put in. So I think making people money is the best way to get them to trust you and want to invest in you. And that's, that's certainly been my story. Now I think there's other people out there a number of people in the space that are kind of more self-funding. Maybe their projects are a little smaller scale, maybe they're more phased. Like Bolt Farm Treehouse is a good example of that. Isaac French with Live Oak Lake is a good example of that. Either smaller or phased projects. And in some cases, they are, trying to make that a generational asset, which if you're trying to make it a generational asset, I think that probably lends itself a little more to owning or at least controlling more of it, yourself, and not being tied to a syndicate or a fund structure that, kind of forces you to sell at a certain amount of time, usually a 7-year time horizon or something like that. So I think it just really depends a lot on your goals and how big you're trying to go and, what access to investors or capital you have. It certainly has been over the past year a pretty challenging environment for raising capital. So it really comes down to like relationships you have, trust you built. Somebody off the street isn't writing you a check most likely. There's been a relationship that's been developed there over years in a lot of cases. So it just kind of depends on your resources there. But when it comes to project size, I always will say, if you're limited on capital resources, do fewer units better. Instead of trying to do like, 10 units and figure out a way to do something cool at, 150 grand a key or, 200 grand a unit even, like I would push to, instead of doing that, do, half the number of units, but give yourself 400 a key and really be able to create something that is going to sell itself. And oh, by the way, whether you have 5 units or 10, when somebody sees the video or, photos of the property, et cetera, it's not going to matter to them in terms of your future opportunities. Like the jump from 5 to 10 isn't going to make that big of a difference in terms of future opportunity for you. If you want to build something bigger your next time or get investors or whatever, like the acclaim and interest and brand that you're going to build both for the property and for yourself is going to be enhanced that much more by doing something aspirational and doing it better and spending more on each unit.
Yeah, totally. I agree with like I think spent in focusing, like being more intentional and focusing and creating uniqueness is it's gotten more the industry has obviously gotten more competitive, and when you look at performance, it's almost like a K-shape recovery in the industry where like some properties are doing really, really, really well, like the top percentile, and then there's sort of like the middle and the lower decile, I guess, that are getting crushed. And I think you know, the more you can invest in a single property, in a single space, the more unique it can feel. Like cash just allows you to do that. I think that's great advice, especially for the person who was earlier talking about that parcel and thinking through like how to approach development. I think that's great advice. There's one in here that I thought was great about, yeah. And sorry, I'm gonna try and get through all these questions with time. Shar asked, have you figured out why the US is lacking in the hospitality space? Any ideas there as how we as hosts can improve that? I'm educating myself on hospitality. It's not just something we are taught often in society here, and trickles down to everyone you hire if they have a hospitality mindset. I know you spent a lot of time when you were thinking through the Onera concept, you were on your honeymoon, and then you were like, why? Why is this so prevalent overseas? Why we have some of the, I think the United States has some of the most incredible natural features in the world also, all these national parks, all these beautiful places, but it seems like people don't lean into the landscape resort as much here. And I know you bring, because I've seen your units, you bring such a, I think, strong user-focused mindset to the property design, where even you're thinking about like, where does the spyglass face and what do they see when they walk in, and how does this all come together? So I think one is, have you figured out sort of why the US is like, do you have hypotheses as to why there? And I think maybe going into a little bit more of your mindset on like what really inspires you when you think about the guest experience, and are there any resources, were there any books you've read or people you listen to that really helped you solidify your perspective on this stuff?
That's a good question. I didn't have that answer pre-thought out, so we're just going to get fully off the cuff my thoughts on why the US is so far behind. I think that a lot of it comes down to how much power the big brands have in the US, and like the rise of the big brand hotels, and the rise of business travel as like, air travel became that much more pervasive. Like the hotel landscape in the US really blew up with air travel, the business traveler, big brands, between like the 60s and the 70s into the 80s. And the traveler at that time also, particularly in the US, it was very much heads in beds. It was all about, standards and comfort, and they wanted to have a good, clean room and a good location, but most of what they were going to do was outside of the room. And I think that's what led to these like big box, fit as many rooms as we can type situation, and kind of drive down cost, but still maintain consistency and some uniformity. I mean, I think that's what led to that. And then, hospitality is, and this asset class, like it's so capital intensive. So you have all of these, big funds and very high net worth individuals that like own hotels, and a lot of them are older and they're a little set in their ways, right? And they have money already. So they're like, okay, this formula works. I can make whatever, 7, 8, 9, 10% of my money. Like that's good enough. And so there hasn't been this big push for innovation, but Airbnb really opened up this ability for much smaller operators, much more entrepreneurial and innovative folks to get into the hospitality and stays space. And I think that's what's led to a lot of this evolution and really revolution in the stays space.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
true. It's more, the US generally is just more corporate. Like there are like a lot of, or fewer huge players. There's a lot of consolidation in many industries. I think it's because of the way, and there are pros and cons to that. And so I've never actually thought about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think to some extent too, other countries like have a little more of like, longer standing, greater history in terms of like culture and like soul, I would even say, right? The US is such like a amalgamation of everything. But I think a lot of it has to do with like when, how new the US is as a nation, and like when all this hotel inventory like really blew up and came online was at a time when it was really about heads and beds and just having a place to stay. Whereas like some of these European properties are so much older and were created at a different time. And so I just think that that has a lot to do with it. And what was the other question? It was a two-parter, right?
And then was there any inspiration? Like, do you borrow have you gotten inspiration from books or speakers or, people that have helped really solidify your perspective on unique stays?
I'm very visual, so it's not from listening to people or I learn a lot from from podcasts and other things for other aspects of the business. But in terms of inspiring, getting inspired for the types of units and design and what we're going to create, a lot of it comes from what I see. Whether that is the property itself, like what does the property call for? I think a lot of times if you spend a lot of time at a piece of property and you really like think through what is going to showcase this property the best, what are the natural features and benefits it has, and how can I lean into that? I think it will inform a lot of your choices. But yeah, I totally take from the cliffs at Hocking Hills, these like amazing natural pools and waterfalls that they've created. Like, I'd like to do some of that on my next property. I saw other people doing tree houses before I did them, and I saw things that I didn't like about theirs that I was gonna, try to make better with mine. One of the big ones is my biggest pet peeve is a box on stilts. So please don't create a box on stilts if you're thinking about creating one of these events, one of these hotels or STRs. There's so many ways that you can do supports that are more aesthetic and interesting than just kind of toothpick looking supports. So think about that. And we've had good architects and designers that were highly creative that worked in collaboration with myself and the team. And we're a very collaborative group. It's like myself, architect, and lead GC and co-developer JB Chisholm, who Mark, you met at the summit, is really amazing and helps us figure out like how can we actually get this stuff done and make it a reality. Because if you don't have that perspective, an architect can spec you something that just like is not financially feasible at all. So it's like, how do we create something that's out of this world and going to just completely blow people away, but make it financially viable and feasible?
Yeah. We have a couple questions in here about design, which I think I know you spent a lot of time thinking about, and we worked closely with Autumn, your designer, on sourcing the furnishings and making sure that the logistics are all squared away and that you guys are getting really strong pricing. You're also in a spyglass unit, so I think it might be a good opportunity. Maybe if you're comfortable, you can like do a little twirl and just show people some of the elements of the design of these units. But how do you? Yeah, obviously, Carla put this in here. Obviously, the property has its own unique attributes with a view and the vista and the space. And then also with the architecture of the properties, those have an incredibly unique element. But then I know you also bring that uniqueness to like thinking through the furnishing, like the stuff you put in the space to really make it all come together. So maybe you could shed some light on how you think about that piece and making sure it all comes together nicely.
Yeah, for sure. I'll speak a little on it and then I'll try to give a quick tour here. So because the Onera Wimberley property has such amazing views, and that's what we want people to really focus on, we don't want to have loud interior furnishing, like super bright colors and things that are distracting, because we want everyone focused on the view and just how inspiring and beautiful and unique the unit is itself. But at the same time, we need very much like upscale and luxury feeling furniture. So that's led us to this kind of minimal modern, we don't have a ton of pieces, but the pieces that we have are we think pretty exceptional. At least some of them are. And yeah, I can give a quick tour here.
Yeah, maybe you can stop sharing your screen just so the video is
oh,
for everybody.
yeah, of course. Good call.
Wonder if we can pin you. Let me see. Pin or spotlight for everybody.
Okay.
Taylor, perfect.
Yeah.
Can everyone see that? Does everyone feel like they got a big view here?
All right. So yes, this bed, Brooklyn bedding through Minoan. We actually custom made the bed frames in here, and that largely is because of this rounded shape we have in the spyglass. It makes the bed construction a little challenging. So to really make it fit and look right, we ended up going custom. This sofa here, you can see very like modern, minimal. We thought through being able to look over the couch from the bed to still see the main focal point here, which I hope you guys can see and it's not too blown out. but is this view. And we have jacuzzi hot tub, hanging off the deck. Hopefully you guys can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we can see it looks great.
So, and then, modern minimal, dining setup, lounge setup that I showed before. One thing we decided to do in the Spyglass, in Wimberley was to make it a little bit bigger so that we could actually fit a nice loungy, love seating area as well as dining. Just seeing that most upscale hotel accommodations have both, and the one that we had in Fredericksburg, you can only really fit a small dining area. Custom cabinetry, Nespresso, kind of an upscale, touch for the coffee side of things. And all of this wood that you see, all of the tongue and groove, walls and ceiling here is cypress, which is, local to Texas. Actually, Wimberley has Cypress Creek, which is, a super big deal here. And there's these hundreds and hundreds of year old cypress trees. So it's a nice kind of ode to the local, community and local landscape. And it's really just beautiful. It's got beautiful grain, really nice hardwood. So yeah, it's a little peek. Actually, I can show the bathroom quick here too. So we have this, I don't know if you can see a curved piece of glass, splash barrier, this really, generous size rain shower, the public goods, which I think is also through Minoan as well, which we love the aesthetic of the public goods dispensers and also the product is really nice. Being all organic, which is very important for our greenhouse units. The other ones we have here, which have all vegetated rooftops with 30 species of native grasses and wildflowers. So we need organic soap, shampoo, so that when that water irrigates the roof, we're not putting any, unnecessary chemicals up there.
One other thing you guys have that I noticed when I was staying there, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a brilliant touch or a brilliant solve to this problem, is you have these portable induction burners. I think from I think we helped you get those on Crate, but
yeah,
it's just I just think it's such a smart way without having to build out a full like kitchen. Like you're able to just do counters and not need to build out a grill or you just have this nice little portable, yeah. So there's just nice little portable induction oven, which can just, if someone wants to use it, they can pull it out and put it on top. You have induction pots and pans. So if someone wants to cook, they can do it. But it's just such a smart way to offer that as an amenity without it being part of the aesthetic, because those are never really nice to look at. I just thought that was really creative as I was taking my own notes when I was like walking through and staying there.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, I think that the ones that we selected are the nicest to look at that I've seen. There certainly could be more of an eyesore than the ones that we got. So, kudos to you guys for having that selection of goods that, are functional, but also, look beautiful.
Well, we only have 4 minutes left here. There's one more question on metrics and return. So are you willing to share any return metrics for your investors, either realized returns from the 90% Fredericksburg sale that are projected? So I don't know what you can and cannot share, but I think you talking at a really high level, whatever you're able to share on how you think about the returns, how you've talked about the returns. You've obviously been able to get new investment into the property. So if you're able to do Wimberley, clearly investors saw something they liked. But
yeah, look, I can definitely speak to this high level and to some extent, granularly. So I think high level, for those of you guys that understand like cap rates and return on cost is a really good way to think about it. Like totally unlevered, no debt. What does the project cost and how much income am I able to generate from it? So Onera properties and anything that I'm looking at developing these days is going to land somewhere between 15 and 20% unlevered yield on cost, return on cost, which is really high. Like we're building which is effectively building to a 15 to 20 cap. And we should be able to sell anywhere between, an 8 cap and maybe like an 11 on the high side. And to give like a point of comparison, like the multifamily developers, they're building to like a 6 cap, maybe 6% return on cost and trying to sell it like a 5 or a 4. So it's, you can see how much bigger the spread is for what we're doing. and how like efficient the real estate is once we get it built. So that's on that side of things. Return for our initial LPs. I mean, the numbers are kind of like mind blowing, right? Because we had cheap debt. You know, we bootstrapped a lot of it. Like there's a whole bunch of reasons, and we sold 90% of it like a year after we opened. So I don't know that we'll ever hit those like percentage numbers again, but it was on a much smaller project, right? So, a few $1,000,000 instead of 20 at Wimberley, right? It's just a different scale. And I think as you scale up, still being able to achieve really good returns, call it, whatever, 20, 25, 30% IRR, is still fantastic because you're able to deploy that much more capital. And we're able to do that consistently. But Onera Fredericksburg, I mean, our IRR was like over 70%. I mean, it was just insane, right? Our multiple on invested capital was 3.9 or something like that. I mean, just bonkers in less than 3 years. So I don't know that we'll ever recreate that again, but it was a small project. So like, if we can achieve half of those numbers on a $20 million deal, that is remarkable. And frankly, that much more investable by people with, big pockets and can want to, fire off and deploy $1, $2, $5 million checks.
Totally. Well, we got a minute left here. I know you gotta run. This is an awesome session. Appreciate the wisdom. How can people, you post a lot. I follow you on LinkedIn. I follow you on Twitter. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. How can people follow you and continue to get sort of the insights as you're going through this?
Yeah, so I post a lot of content, a lot of educational stuff, and my hot takes about the industry on LinkedIn. So you can find me, Ben Wolff, WOLFF. And if you search like Ben Wolff Onera, I'll definitely pop up if I don't pop up right away on LinkedIn. On Twitter or X, I am Unique Stays Guy. So you can check me out there. And yeah, if you're interested in Oasi or our services, we have I think an inquire with us about our services link that was sent out by Minoan, and stayoasi.com is our website, and you can find us there too.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Ben. Also appreciate the impromptu tour of the unit so everyone could see just how awesome it is. Thanks for hopping on, sharing some wisdom, and looking forward to having the whole Minoan team there next week.
Me too. Thanks a
All
lot,
right.
Mark. Taylor,
Thanks, Ben. Thanks everyone for joining.
yeah, thanks for coming, guys.
Bye.